Hey everyone, it's Jeremy again. Wanted to talk about something today, a topic that is generally swept under the rug, mental health. Specifically, I'm going to talk about a certain kind of therapy that is helpful. It's called DBT, Dialectical Behavior Therapy, DBT for obvious reasons. It's a form of CBT that helps retrain your brain. Its main goals are to help teach people how to live in the moment, cope in healthy ways with stress, regulate emotions, improve relationships. Big one for me, learning to be at peace with oneself. Um, Teaches distress tolerance, both simple and more complex, emotion regulation, both basic and advanced, interpersonal effectiveness skills, and here's a big one, uh, something called exposure based cognitive rehearsal. Most people have not heard of that. Um, this last one, it's voluntarily facing situations where you're triggered, usually doing with a therapist, someone trained in DBT, or a safe friend. Um, Used to help practice facing those situations where you normally have trouble. To rehearse those situations where you may mess up, to practice facing them until you become more confident facing them. It's taught in modules, four different categories: mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and emotion regulation. It's a type of CBT in that it tries to identify and change negative thinking patterns. It pushes for positive behavioral changes. It's used for many things, more than I will list here, but borderline personality disorder, to treat suicidal ideation, several other self destructive behaviors. I'm actually starting to use this one myself. What I'm seeing is that it helps to practice peace, to learn to get better. That's what I mean when I use the word practice, to get better at what I'm doing. Um, and I use the example of Michael Jordan, one of the best basketball players that ever was. He still had to show up to practice every day to try and get better. But it helps with that in life. Helps bring What I'm seeing is that it helps bring back to normal, back to a flat line of emotions, less extreme, coming back to just being, not being influenced as much by the everyday ups and downs of life, practicing peace, and learning and continually changing to be at a state of peace despite our outer environments and influences. It's been proven in treating. It proven beneficial in treating anxiety. It gives people patients control over their recovery, giving them choices on how to deal with emotions, not just being stuck in that box of what I would normally think or self-limiting ideas. Um, it helps to get you a clear picture of emotions and actions instead of blindly reacting, probably out of line and irrational. Helps to pause, think, react thoughtfully and carefully and sanely. What I'm noticing it teaches is what I call George Costanza Syndrome. There was an episode of Seinfeld where he says, if everything I've ever done has been wrong, by default, the opposite has to be right. And then he goes up, he says, instead of going he's sitting with Jerry in the diner. He says, instead of coming up with some line over to that girl at the counter over there and saying I work for Vandelay, or I'm really Steinbrenner, or whatever it is, he goes, I'm going to try telling the truth. And it's along the lines of, if everything he's ever done is wrong, by default the opposite has to be right. And he goes up to the girl. He says, hi, my name is George. I'm bald, I'm unemployed, and I live with my parents. And she's, oh, hey, how are you? She's actually interested. Just not going to work like that in real life, but it's helpful. It's provided in two main ways, same categories as other therapeutic work, individual or group. Individually, a counselor would help with the same MASK, as I mentioned in a previous video. It's motivation, accountability, structure, and knowledge. The counselor would act as a guide to help stay motivated to apply DBT skills in everyday life, like having homework. There's the accountability. You have to answer to it with the therapist. The group sessions let the people in the group practice with others and provide support for each other. In either one, people are given homework to do to get experience doing these exercises. Um, One of these practices that I must do for myself is create a relaxation plan, help get out of a negative rut. Thinking of fun moments instead of overworking, doing something as simple as remembering to watch a funny movie or TV show. I like Impractical Jokers, but something I had said previously is to practice peace, to unwind the anxiety that comes from the day. There's a certain book of anger, the biggest book there is. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Give no opportunity to the devil. Helps to practice that every night before bed. It's not something I necessarily have to do for anger, but for anxiety. Something I've learned alongside this over the years is fear. The acronym of fear. There's F everything and run, or face everything and recover. Helps learn to face those things. That's what the rehearsal is about, to work with this, whether it's in a group or in seeing a therapist or seeing someone who knows about it, to practice it and get better at it. But something that had crossed my mind in working with for this video is there's a radio DJ in New York. I don't know if he's on in other parts of the country. I'm sure he is. Charlemagne the God. He wrote a book called Shook Ones. You know, there's a rap song that came out in the late 90s called Shook Ones. But he said something very interesting about how he's open. This guy, Charlemagne the God, is open about his anxiety. And he said something very interesting. He uses a bunch of these tools, and so does Lady Gaga. But he said something interesting about anxiety. You know, and it stuck with me. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Learning to do those things and getting practice at it and dealing with it head on. You know, nothing can be changed until it is faced. DBT, it's this. It's a very powerful tool. I don't use all of it. I use the parts that apply to me. 52 practices to help to balance your emotions every day. And it's proving beneficial. The parts that I do use are proving to be beneficial. It is a good tool to use, something most people haven't heard of. Most people would not admit to openly about having mental health issues. But it's there, and there are tools we can use. Hope you try it. If you have any questions, let me know at my website at www.changeyourlight.com.